Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Tuesday, October 26th, 2021, and today we're going to be taking a look at the state of Texas, a state that is traditionally viewed as a solid red state, now confirmed by the Texas Senate and signed into law by Governor Greg Abbott, that the new districts will be drawn in such a manner that have been finalized and will be used for the next 10 years. Now, Texas, in essence, actually isn't a solid red state, but when you take a look at the state legislature and, the newfound House of Representatives map, you might think so, simply because of how the map has been drawn. But Texas actually has been narrowing up over the past few elections. In the most recent one, on the presidential level, voted for Donald Trump by a margin of just 5.6%. So in the foreseeable future, Texas will inevitably turn blue, but the question is when. But it doesn't matter. At this point in time, the Democratic Party will not have some type of major surge, at least when it comes down to the House elections. The confirmation of the Texas map here is a huge deal because it prevents the Democratic Party and making any major gains in the state of Texas. The Republican Party shored up every single one of their districts with an incumbent besides one. Beyond that, the Democratic Party has been left with just 34% maximum of state representation across the state of Texas. Democrats are taking this to heart, going to extreme gerrymanders in the states that they control for this redistricting cycle, but the problem is the Republicans have way more of an advantage than the Democrats when it comes down to that issue. And I'll show you what I mean by that. But taking a look at this new Texas map, you can see how in the old one, there were many more competitive districts. There were competitive districts in the 3rd, in the 6th, in the 31st, in the 23rd, in the 21st, in the 10th, in the 22nd, in the 2nd district. All of these were competitive. Democrats held all of the ones that were deemed to be total toss-ups, but for the rest of them, they were very competitive in the past. Now, taking a look at the new map, every single one of these Republicans are now in a very safe position. Every single one, with no exceptions, except this one. Tony Gonzalez, who really is in a very good position, enough so that I would say that this will probably go to the Republicans by a very large margin. In the 23rd district previously, Republicans had luck. They had won there in years prior. Republicans had a 5-point advantage across the 23rd district following the 2020 election, which means that it is 5 points more Republican than the rest of the nation. This new map is 13 points more Republican, so when you put it into perspective, if everything else was equal, the 23rd district would also be considered safe. But the fact is, all of these other districts that used to have competitive areas, the Republican Party has drawn them in a way where they no longer can be so competitive for the Democratic Party and really for the next 5, 6, 7 years. Maybe by 2028 that more of these districts will become more competitive, but as they are drawn right now and as they have been finalized by the Republican Party in the state of Texas, they will be extremely solid for the GOP. And you can see here that in terms of the change from the old map, the Republican Party added 5 Democratic-leaning seats. Now, the reason why that may seem beneficial to the Democratic Party is only because these 5 Democratic-leaning seats were previously competitive seats, but Democrats already held them, which means that they aren't gaining any seats through this new map, and if anything, it's actually reducing their possibility of victories in the future. Take a look at this old map over here. There were a number of toss-up races and then a number of lean red seats. That meant that in a wave year for the Democratic Party, possibly better than 2018, they could have won the majority of seats from the state of Texas. But that is no longer the case. All of that solid red has well gone over the majority line, pouring into one seat that is previously, that is now Republican-leaning, one Republican-leaning seat, versus the old one, which was 8 Republican-leaning seats. 1 versus 8. And in terms of the highly competitive seats, you had 6 highly competitive seats. Now you have 1. So in all of the state of Texas, with its 38 congressional districts, there are 3 competitive seats versus what was, taking a look at it, 14 across the state with 2 less districts. They had 2 added because of the redistricting process and the population changes in the state of Texas. All around here, this map is one of the worst gerrymanderings that I would say that we have seen, but none rival the one from the state of Illinois. And I think that this one is the Democratic Party's retaliation to things that they see in Texas. Now, before we get into Illinois, I want you to understand why the Democratic Party is trying to take advantage of the states that they have complete control over. In the redistricting process on your screen right now, every single state that is considered to be red or that you see as red have full-on Republican control over how these districts will be drawn. there are very populous states in this. Ohio, 15 congressional districts. Texas, 38 congressional districts. Florida, 28. Georgia, 14. North Carolina, 14. The Democratic Party is in blue. Oh, so then what are the yellow and the green? Well, the green are independent commissions, and in many of these cases, the two parties have to agree on a finalized map. Michigan, Virginia, can't seem to arrive at an agreement there. The Democratic Party probably is going to be screwed over by an independent commission in states such as Colorado and Arizona that don't take into account that Joe Biden won these states. Colorado specifically could potentially have a Republican majority after 2022, even though Joe Biden won the state by 14 points. The point being that these independent commissions do a disservice to the Democratic Party, but a service to the rest of the nation in the sense that they make things fairer. But they can only truly be an equal fairness map if every single state goes through this type of process, which is why both parties are trying to do everything they can within the states they still have left control. But again, what I wanted to point out here was that Democrats have over 100 less seats than the GOP in terms of redistricting. 100 less seats. And the Democratic Party's real big ones, the only ones that are in double digits, are New York and Illinois. For the Republican Party, they have 5 states that they can characterize as above double digits with double digits that they have full control over. The Democrats just have New York and Illinois. So in the state of Illinois, I think that this map largely came into response from what we've seen in the proposals in North Carolina, the proposals in Virginia, the proposals and now passed map in Texas. The Democratic Party took Illinois, which is a state in which the Republican Party receives about 40% of the vote, and they will give them effectively 17% of state representation in the state of Illinois. They draw the map in such a way where the old map gave the Democrats nearly the majority, but with 2 Democratic-leaning seats and 2 toss-up seats, the Republicans had 5 seats. While in this new map, Republicans have 3, Democrats have 13, and then there's an additional seat here that is deemed highly competitive that Democrats also had the advantage in. So the point being that what this does removes 2 Republican-leaning seats, removes 1 highly competitive seat, and adds in 2 Democratic-leaning seats. So overall, based off of the net here, the Democratic Party will get 2 seats from the GOP, considering they currently only hold 5. But you can see just how cracked Chicago is across the entire state. I mean, you can see how they took a very small sliver of Illinois' 2nd District up here. Sorry about that, my screen recorder cut out, but I was talking about how Chicago has been drawn in so many different ways to really make all of these districts more democratic. And you can see it here clearly in the 2nd District, where they take slivers of the suburbs and the outskirts and then go dive deep into the city. Point being that the Democratic Party knows exactly what they are doing. They are doing this to prevent the GOP from making major gains in other states. If Republicans can't win beyond 3 districts in a state with 17, that will make it more difficult for the GOP to win the majority in 2022. If they were to draw a fair map, honestly speaking, it probably would be somewhere around here, where Democrats would take this district and the rest would go to the GOP. It would probably only add 1 more seat, maybe 2 more at most, but now they actually get a reduction of 2 and at most 3 overall. And that's why the Democratic Party views this as a map where they are honestly considering passing it. In fact, the first map, which was a very egregious gerrymander, which was also a 14 to 3 map, the National Democrats came in and submitted a proposal to make it 15 to 2. Now, the Illinois Democrats took a step back and didn't go through with that plan, but proposed an even more democratic plan. And it's very possible, actually, if they actually start to see Texas, amongst other states, confirm their electoral maps, the Democrats could actually propose a 15 to 2 map, and it is possible to draw a 15 to 2 map in the state of Illinois. In fact, it is possible to draw a 17 to 0 map in the state of Illinois, with Chicago going up all across the entire state itself, in which every single one of those districts. So my screen recorder really doesn't want to be nice today, and it is messing me up yet again. But I was talking about the 17 to 0 gerrymander and how it's possible, and not something that's likely, but possible to make Biden plus 10 districts across all 17 districts across the state of Illinois, which is something that would be the biggest gerrymander we probably will have seen in a very, very long time. But you can see here now that Texas has solidified that this makes it very difficult for Democrats to win in the future. In 2018, the gerrymander was enough to prevent, actually, this is the Texas House of Representatives election. Let's actually go ahead and not confuse it with this one. In 2018, though, the Democratic Party came within 3 points of winning the popular vote across the state of Texas. And you know what happened? Because Republicans accounted for this back in 2010, they drew the districts in such a way that Democrats could not win the majority of districts, even with nearly the majority of the votes. And it wasn't just the majority of districts. You're talking about the Democratic Party effectively having 37% of representation when they won 47% of the vote. These maps and these districts were already drawn in such a way that Democrats could not win, and the Republicans made them even more partisan. Even more partisan than how they were. And that old map really wasn't super good for the Democratic Party. So when I take a look at these numbers from 2018, and I see that a 3-point popular vote margin translates to a nearly 20-point margin in terms of overall representation, I question the validity of a map. The same way I've made multiple videos talking about the state of Illinois. But that Illinois map has yet to be confirmed. And I think once it is, I will make an additional video talking about how other states will likely follow in the footsteps and take a look at states that seem to be potentially following in such footsteps. But you can see how the popular vote in Texas hasn't exactly matched the overall number of seats for the Democratic Party in the state of Texas. And now it's going to get increasingly more difficult. I think this is the harsh reality for the Democratic Party, that because they don't have control over a number of these states, their only real silver linings coming out of redistricting might be New York and Illinois. And even then, in the state of New York, it looks like some of the proposed maps already don't seem to be drawing the maps in such an unfortunate manner. The most recent one would give the GOP a good amount of seats to win, at least compared to what the state of Illinois has done, and compared to what some other states plan to do for their maps for the opposition party compared to who is in power altogether. So looking around these maps, Texas is one of the first states to solidify its very large number of congressional districts. It is also one of those states that has shored up almost every single Republican district. Indiana did it. The Republicans seem to be planning to do so in the state of Georgia. They seem to be planning to do so in the state of North Carolina. So when I see the state of Texas, looking at that map, looking at Indiana, both of them have followed in each other's footsteps of solidifying their Republican bases. It puts the GOP in a position where they are completely controlling the narrative for the next 10 years in a number of these districts. They may be drawn in a way that may represent Houston, but it already has way too many rural voters, enough that these Houston voters can't counteract the Republican nature of many of these seats. I think that this is going to be the blueprint. Texas and Indiana are going to be the blueprint for the GOP. They've already hinted that they are going to be shoring up a number of districts. The 6th district, which used to have a partisan lean of just Democrat +1, this new proposed map would give it a partisan lean of Republican +16. And instead of keep 2 toss-up districts, they would take one that has a Republican lean of 4 and make it a Democratic lean of 14 to pretty much solidify the Democratic regions of the 6th and 7th districts and prevent the Democratic Party from winning both, and instead only having one. And I mentioned the state of Indiana for a reason, and I want you to see what happened. In the old map, there used to be a competitive 5th district. In the new map, the 5th district is Republican +22. Before, it was Republican +8. So you can see here how the GOP has been shoring up their districts across a number of lines. Even Nebraska, which used to have an even partisan lean in the 2nd district, now has a 3-point lead in the 2nd district. And considering there's already a Republican incumbent and how 2022 is expected to go all around here, I'm not too hopeful for the Democratic Party's chances in the state of Nebraska. So when I take a look at all of these maps where the GOP is having near full control over how these districts are being drawn, or sometimes full control, you can start to see how the maps are drawn in a way that makes it not super easy for victories for the Democratic Party and how they shore up some of these districts. Now, this independent redistricting commission is trying to get 1 seat for the Democrats in the state of Utah. If you take a look at the map here, though, it is controlled by Republicans. So this new map here, which gives the Democrats 1 district, will likely be turned into a full Republican state with 4 Republican districts. That's what the GOP wanted back in 2010. They didn't get it because one of the districts actually defied expectations and went blue. But ultimately, they will not make the same mistake out of fear the Democrats could win the majority again in 2022. So pretty much the Democratic Party and the Republican Party are playing tit for tat here, and they're fighting fire with fire. I think with this new confirmation from Texas, this has confirmed many of the Democratic Party's scares and worries about how the redistricting process will go for them in a number of other states. The fact is, Texas's map is probably not going to change. No matter how much the Democratic Party involves legal issues or goes to court, whatever it might be, I honestly don't see a winnable future for Democrats in Texas, and many other states are likely to follow suit with it. So Democrats are going to be playing full offense, but neither of them are correct in what they do. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video you can watch, and then a playlist for my 2022 election analysis videos. Actually, let's make that redistricting analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all later today.